Okay, welcome everyone to our planned Zoom service. My name is Gabby, Priestess Gabby Chai Bird, representing Universal Ministry of Transcendence up here in Palmer, Alaska. And the anticipation has been building. We've had three different, this will be our third speaker in a row, like on time, as it's supposed to be, twice a month meetings. Next month, we're Lena Franklin from Atlanta from the East Institute is going to join us to talk about, we don't know yet what exactly, but today we have Dr. Markian Babij. He is a naturopathic doctor from Anchorage, Alaska. He works with entheogens. He has a long resume of work in oncology. Is that the right term, Markian?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, natural oncology, yeah.
natural oncology. So he's a really interesting speaker because not only is he coming from like a medical perspective that is absolutely professional, but he also is like super interested in the entheogens and works with them, and also like medicinal mushrooms and herbs. And Markian and I met at the writer's block when he was presenting on Amanita muscaria. We immediately hit it off. And from there, we've actually been doing chaga circles and ceremonies together, along with my husband, Dennis, to bring awareness to Amanita muscaria mushroom and chaga in an honoring ceremony for the birch forest up here in Alaska. So today, my friend, esteemed doctor, and yeah, I'm really personally very excited for this meeting. It is a little bit more like advanced, so I'm happy to see some of you guys who have experience with this organic technology and give you a chance at the end to ask Dr. B any questions that you might have. So yeah, thank you so much, Markian, and I am going to let you take it away from here. This is a talk about set and setting. It is about not only the external set and setting, but also the internal. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to talk about nutrition around the entheogenic experience as well as fasting. And we're going to, and Doctor is going to talk about the placebo and nocebo effect as well. So please take it away. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. I think maybe we'll just start by talking about some of the easier stuff, the more fun stuff. I mean, it makes sense to talk about nocebo, placebo effect because I think you guys are probably all very familiar. Is everybody familiar with placebo effect? I mean, I think that it's important to talk about placebo effect because it ties exactly into some of the other things we'll talk about. And placebo effect is obviously just expecting more from something, especially when someone gives it to you. Did you guys know that when you actually, when I give a patient a red pill, there's a higher placebo effect? And when you inject someone, the placebo effect goes even higher, right? Because if I'm injecting you with a medicine, it's more invasive, so you're expecting that will be a more profound effect. Um, I just think these are really interesting phenomenon, and I'm sure you've all experienced it. It seems like you guys are all in the know, so I'm sure everyone's aware of the fact that someone can also do this in a negative way, and that's the nocebo effect, right? Where you can talk yourself into believing you're having the worst experience ever, and maybe all it takes is a friend or someone like Gabby, who is a bit more experienced, to put their hand on you and say, "Hey, it's going to be okay." Or maybe you even say it to yourself, like, "Oh, I've been here before. This is a little bit rough, but I know I'm going to get through this difficult nausea and everything's going to be amazing later." These are forms of nocebo and placebo effect, right? Like, we don't necessarily need to do much more than self-soothe or even self-direct. And the nocebo effect, I don't know if anyone's seen that, where you like a person is so against, let's just pick something like tobacco, so against tobacco that maybe they're not aware of the fact that they could potentially learn something positive from tobacco or mushrooms for that matter, or anything for that matter, right? So I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about the placebo and the nocebo effect because I think that these things are greatly accentuated with preparatory work. Um, I mean, I think it's really different when you actually apply the principles that we use to really make someone a safe vessel, like a safe womb. I call it the spiritual canoe. I'm like, look, if we're gonna go on this spiritual canoe ride together, I don't know about you guys, but I want a pretty sturdy canoe. Like I want a canoe that can go over Niagara Falls. And you're not gonna get that unless you put a lot of pre-work into strengthening that vessel that is your spiritual canoe. Um, it's quite interesting that we focus so often on, and I'm focused on this, guys. Like I like the pre-work and I like that people are prepared. I think you can really facilitate a better experience. I know that for me personally, also, even in the recreational realm, I've always felt like it's like more fun when you prepare. It doesn't even have to be a dedicated ceremony. It could be, for instance, a party with friends. But I think if you're preparing for that potluck and everyone's preparing and looking forward to it, usually you have a more successful potluck, right? If you throw it together last minute without any preparatory work, things don't usually go that well. I mean, Gabby did a really good job putting this together, but even in Zoom settings that are professional, things kind of go south. So we had a couple snags, right? But like if Gabby did zero preparation and then literally tonight just wanted to do a Zoom, it's not going to work very well. And I think that a lot of our psychedelic experiences are similar. I've learned this through trial and error. Like I'm not going to preach and pretend that I know all the answers. I mean, I've done my fair share of spontaneous taking of many things, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem to do that. I've just noticed that if you really work hard to culminate the strongest, best steering spiritual canoe you can make, then you have a way better trip. It works better. It just tried and true. This is where a lot of the educational hoops are from, is this idea that, well, I mean, I think another thing that comes up is that like in the 60s, this medicine, like many medicines, were well proven in the 30s, right? It's like gone kind of like underground and back, and then it pushes back underground. I think part of it, I wasn't in the 60s, so I don't know, but part of me wonders if maybe we had more guardrails around some of these experiences people were having. Maybe we wouldn't have made it into such a demonized set of drugs, right? Like we put all these drugs as Schedule 1, and I think everybody here knows that they shouldn't really be Schedule 1 drugs. Um, so set and setting, like all kinds of props and cues are super important for us, right? And every one of us in this Zoom has different circumstances. So, some of us are going to really like roses and others are going to be very traumatized by roses, right? So we have to figure out what are the props and cues that we need to make sure that our vessel is the best floating vessel. Lighting is so important. Smell is so important. The olfactory is the one part of the brain where we don't have a synapse that connects to another synapse. Our olfactory, our smell, is one of the quickest ways to evoke a memory, which is why it's super cool. We have a lot of indigenous cultures that already have taught us, right? Like we burn sage, we burn Palo Santo, we burn these wonderful fragrances so that later on we can continue to use those props and cues to remind us of the benefit of our ceremony. And then we take the lessons that we learn. What I think is the most amazing part of a lot of these agents that we're talking about is that if you do so much of the pre-work before you go into the experience, you don't even have to focus too hard during the experience. Your innate intelligence, your healer within that we all have, it meets the substance that you're using and together collaborates for you an understanding, a vision, or maybe even it's something you cannot articulate, but it just is a sense of knowing. That's incredible, right? Like, isn't that what every priest and priestess and religious person should be trying to evoke in any one of their persons that are a member of their congregation? I mean, I think Gabby and I can both say we really we like these. Sorry?
This. Can I have some?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, okay, so I talked about lighting, smell, music, touch, prayer, intention, allies, the decor of the room you're in. All of those things need to be curated properly. Also, you could have a mantra, or you could even have a set of goals. Maybe you want to stop smoking. Maybe you want to eat better. The way I like to transition people into this idea that they could benefit by fasting is because I'm super enthralled with the mechanism, guys. It's like, has anybody heard about fasting? You know, as fellow seekers, I think everyone can appreciate me giving us a tip to help expedite or improve or even maximize an experience with using less medicine. Isn't that kind of cool? I mean, I love superhero doses. I really do. But the older I get, the more I realize, well, isn't it fascinating to get a superhero dose with a tiny dose? And you can do this. Like, did you guys know that when you don't eat, it changes your co-kinetics? Your drug pharmacokinetics are changed. You experience things quicker. I mean, we already know this, guys. Everybody has already been told many, many times, oh, you haven't had anything to eat all day and you're going to pound those 4 vodkas. We all know that is kinetics at play. If I ate a steak and then I eat alcohol, the kinetics are such that I absorb this alcohol in a way that is titrated and tolerable. And at the end of it, potentially even beneficial, believe it or not, because a lot of these substances, psilocybin, LSD, alcohol is one of them as well, as is water, as is oxygen. So we can actually manipulate all of those substances to change how our body experiences and kinetically breaks down a drug. This is pretty incredible, right? Like back to the placebo effect, right? Like there are some drugs that people insufflate, and that act for some people isn't a big deal. But for many people, it's socially taboo to insufflate or snort something. So remember what I said at the beginning, guys. If I inject someone with a red dye, there's a higher placebo effect. So if you snort a drug and you think it's taboo to do so, you could potentiate the placebo effect, but you could also potentiate the nocebo effect, right? You could potentiate this negative, like, oh my gosh, now I'm in trouble. What did you give me? Why did you make me snort this up my nose, right? So obviously, a large part of that is education, right? Because there are many cultures in which we use snuff. And for those who are not aware of it and not educated, it could potentiate a negative or a nocebo effect. So that's super interesting to me. And it brings us full circle to this idea of like, what can I do to make the spiritual vessel a more smooth ride? And I know that my canoe has such good integrity that if I do encounter some difficulty, some bumps, some rocks, some rapids, that at least I know that my canoe is going to keep me on top of the water. So when I talk about using these cues, it's not just taking supplements or just changing your diet. It's all of the things that you think you can do that will work for you in that situation. But I will say that fasting is not something you just try. You need to be acquainted with how your body is going to work before you decide to pair that with any entheogen. But I can tell you that from a medical perspective, from a chemistry perspective, and a pharmacokinetic perspective, everything says that that experience will be bigger, just as it would be when you drank alcohol on an empty stomach, right? Another reason I like this technique for a lot of ceremony is that when you eat food, there's a whole opposite phenomenon that occurs. And this new phenomenon is how you actually build protein structures. Did you guys know that brain-derived neurotrophic factor is just a protein-building peptide that tells your brain to grow the cerebral cortex to make your brain bigger. It's pretty cool. So if you tie that to an experience that is also in its own right growing your brain, right? Like I could take mushrooms and sit around and play video games all day. We could argue whether that's good or bad. I don't know, but I could watch TV, I could scroll, or I could maybe go on a hike with my friend and learn about some new herbs, maybe pick some chaga, make a tincture. These are kind of interesting choices because when I do that, I'm stacking, right? So I'm doing something that's educational and benefiting my brain, but I've also preloaded it with a whole method of dietary restriction to then upregulate my brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Then, of course, if you added breathing exercise on top of it, you're stacking it more. And then a lot of what we do when it comes to entheogenic support is reminding people, and I think you guys are aware of this, right? I think instinctually, most people that are in these realms are offering cacao, they're offering tea, they're offering subtle phytochemicals that push this boundary of health, right? Because the whole goal here is to associate these experiences with wellness and health so that we grow positively, we potentiate the placebo effect that's benefiting our need for change rather than any nocebo effect, right? Because I could easily go into the experience and say, this isn't going to work. I don't like cacao, you know, and that's going to change my experience if I'm going into it as a curmudgeon. But if I go into the experience thinking, I know cacao is good for me, although I find it bitter, I'm really going to bite off and join this and be fully participating. That's going to potentiate more of that positive placebo effect. So I just want to give you guys a few tips for BDNF upregulating foods. Because if you're it's not for everybody to starve themselves before doing an entheogenic experience. I think it's definitely something that you want to consider because it's a way to deepen the experience and make it more profound. I'm a big believer in this idea that like the womb or the spiritual canoe is a space of intimacy, and the word intimacy is into me, you see. And that's really how it works, right? So whoever you're doing your experience with should be someone you trust, obviously. That's going to potentiate more of that positive placebo effect. Without the use of fasting in this regard, I think the best things that I can recommend for BDNF upregulation are breathing exercises in which there's a little bit of holding of the breath, because that can really potentiate an increase in this protein that will build your brain during, after the experience that you're heading into. I really like modified citrus pectin, and I really like medium chain triglycerides. Medium chain triglycerides are found in coconut oil, but you can also buy MCT oil. These are awesome things to take if you're going into a fast and you wanted to keep things light. These are really good foods that will keep you brain alert and calorie filled. And of course, they're boring. That's kind of part of the point, though, is to not bring in so much external joy in the form of food, because it can be a way to keep your blood sugar uneven. And uneven blood sugar simply means an uneven nervous system, right? You don't want that during these experiences. You want to be even the whole way through if you can. So I like butter, I like MCT oil, and like I said, I like many citrus products because the citrus has limonene in it, which is immune supportive, and it also helps potentiate certain substances. It works really well with fungi. It potentiates a breakdown of converting into the actual prodrug that your body uses. So I really like citrus, MCT oil, fatty diets. And of course, I love the idea of taking a pause before anything. And you guys have seen this, right? Many of the cultures don't want you eating a whole bunch of different things. For one, they don't want you to vomit. And for two, they're understanding that too much energy coming into the body is too much information, right? The whole point is to to get people to the place where they find that innate healing, that they've tapped into that, and they've learned how to read those signals and then translate that, right? I think Betsy's doing a class next week about this, about the importance of how, like, what do you do with this experience? Like, how do you reintegrate it, and how do you start it? And there's a definite method that will work, and that's really up to each person to decide. So I really like essential fatty acids. You guys got that. I love fish oil. I love the medium chain triglycerides. I also like a few supplements that I think are pretty much standard that you should take. Magnesium threonate is a form of magnesium that helps cross the blood-brain barrier. It's also particularly good at neuroplasticity improvement and support for neuroplasticity. You know, part of why you're doing these things is to improve neuroplasticity. So it makes complete sense to stack lion's mane and magnesium threonate for the minimum of a month after any ceremony. Ideally, you just continue taking lion's mane because it's certainly of benefit. I also think it's important to, during, after an experience, have some movement, you know, movement that crosses the midline, lots of yoga. Oh, am I still there?
We're here. Okay, resume. Everyone good? Sorry about that.
So lion's mane, the three things that I really think are important for you guys to take home from that stacking is lion's mane. A lot of people just don't take enough. They don't realize, you know, a lot of people take one capsule. With lion's mane, you need to shoot for about 800 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams a day for it to be of major benefit to your brain and the neuroplasticity. I love essential fatty acids. I tell people to get at least 1,000 milligrams of EPA. That's eicosapentaenoic acid. That's an important supplement. It's been well documented. It's been shown to work as effectively as an antidepressant when you take high doses. So of course it makes sense. Your brain's made of fat. Your neurons are made of fat. This is why a lot of the BDNF upregulating foods are simply nuts, seeds, and fats. Pumpkin seeds, for example, sunflower seeds, for example, they're so rich with nutrient content, and they're also very rich in essential fatty acids, not to mention saturated fat. These are all foods that keep us in a ketogenic state. I won't go too much into the details, but a glycolytic state is where most of us are at. When we're glycolytically driven, we're constantly using our pleasure and pain centers and many hormones to balance blood sugar. We've only been taught that we're going to have problems when our blood sugar is too low. No one seems to remember that there's problems when the blood sugar is too high. If you eat fat and protein, you will not have high blood sugar because this is ketogenic. It's an entirely different fuel for your body, and your brain works better on it. There's much data to support that. So other than mag threonate, lion's mane, those are really important supplements. And the dose for magnesium threonate is about 150 milligrams to 300 milligrams daily, minimum for most people. If anybody ever gets loose stools or diarrhea, they should back off on their dose, but it's not likely with this particular form of magnesium. The third of these supplements that I think is important to consider is saffron. You can use saffron as a tea or as a supplement. Saffron greatly increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor and has been shown to be very helpful for elevating mood. Not to mention the fact that Cleopatra used to bathe in it before having her own ceremonies. And studies show that just smelling saffron lowers cortisol levels, literally lowers cortisol levels. That's a stress hormone. You do not want cortisol to be high during your experience. Lowering your cortisol can be accomplished with many things, right? Breathing, yoga, like we talked about earlier, someone touching you and saying it's going to be okay. So this doesn't have to be supplements, right? You can use all kinds of things to improve and change your set and setting. I just want to list you guys some of my favorite teas because I think phytochemicals in teas are so important. And teas are also not just medicinal in their action, but you're holding a warm cup of tea. I mean, it's like not as good as a warm hug, but it's in the realm. So I like Rubio's tea. It's a great BDNF upregulator. I like ginkgo, bacopa, and gotu kola because they're all improving circulation specific to the brain. Additional supplements to consider. And I think it's important to I like patients and like people to do their own inquiry. Like a lot of times you'll read about things and you'll figure, you know what, this sounds really, really cool. I'm really resonating with this particular plant. Most of them are fairly safe. And so has anybody heard of milk thistle? Do you know that milk thistle is often called the great protector? We call her the great protector because there's this old pagan philosophy that has been adopted in herbal medicine over the years. And what we have discovered is that these ancient ways of looking at herbs, they're kind of weird, but we're now learning that, wait a second, as weird as that might be, why wouldn't I want to believe in something that could potentiate the placebo effect? So for example, milk thistle is called the great protector because it's a purple flower with sharp spines coming out of the crown. And so early herbalists, probably witches, were looking at this plant and going, oh, well, this plant protects the liver because the liver is a purple organ and it's got these spiny thorns that protect it. So before we even knew the science that there's a compound in milk thistle called silymarin, and then if you get about 150 to 250 milligrams of silymarin extract every day, it can actually help protect your liver and build your adipocytes, the cells in the liver and pancreas are protected with milk thistle. This is pretty cool. And now we've got new data to show that in hormone-sensitive breast cancers, colorectal cancers, and prostate cancers, milk thistle is an agent that helps balance the hormones in those cancers. And it's interesting, the more and more we learn about milk thistle, the more we actually confirm this pagan belief that it's the great protector. Now, that doesn't work in every situation. However, what I'm trying to demonstrate to you guys is that if I keep this jar of candied ginger near my patient's canoe, in theory, I may never have to give them the ginger because I've actually put the ginger in the room with them. And now the ginger is becoming an ally energetically in this particular scenario. So of course I have the ginger, and if the person's having a lot of nausea, I might give them the ginger. However, if they're on ketamine, I'm probably not going to give them the ginger because that might make them puke, right? So I can give them homeopathic ginger, or I can even use ginger spray. Because remember, it's the intention of the ginger. That intention alone could potentially work without me actually having to take ginger internally. And just to be clear, you guys, another thing with ginger is that often I'll tell people, hey, look, have the ginger 4 to 6 hours before you even do the ceremony. Because ginger, if you take it 4 to 6 hours before the ceremony, it could still have a protective effect And even if it doesn't protect against nausea, guess what ginger does? It's a kinetic inducer. So it actually can help whatever substance you're going to work with, it can help that work better just by taking ginger the morning of or having it in the room. So this idea of doctrine of signatures is simply saying, hey, I want you to bring whatever you like into that spiritual canoe. And if we can't fit it into the spiritual canoe, then let's put it in the room where the spiritual canoe is. And so quite often we see altars, we see people bringing in things that are familiar to them and things they want to have to keep with them for the rest of their journey. All of those things that they bring in play a role. And you guys know this. This is not new information for most of us. Come on in. Sorry, guys. I'll lock up. So I wanted to just talk. Does anybody know about flower essences?
Yes.
Yeah. Or how about rescue remedy? Have you heard about rescue remedy? I mean, do you ever wonder how rescue remedy works?
Will you go through both of those things, actually, for those of us that don't know?
Okay, so flower essences is back to this pagan thing that I was just discussing with you guys, where this is a really difficult subject to talk about because there's not a lot of science to back it up. But I'll just start by saying this. Do you know what homeopathic medicine is?
Yes, I think most of us do, but I'm not sure.
So if I want to make a homeopathic medicine out of this goji berry, like right now, this goji berry is a goji berry. It is 100% crude. It's called crude medicine, goji berry. I can make a tincture out of it. I can make a supplement out of it. I can make it into a paste. But if I want to make it into a homeopathic, the whole point of a homeopathic is to make it super innocuous. And right now, it's not innocuous. It tastes like a goji berry. If I take that goji berry and take one little tiny piece of it and put it in water and shake it up, essentially, I have changed the hydrogen molecules in the water to a vibratory level that goji berry aligns with. I can then take that and put that one drop of that new liquid into new water and keep diluting it. I can keep diluting that hundreds of times. I can actually dilute it to the point where a modern day mathematician will tell you that there's no chance that there's any goji berry in that piece of water that you're giving. However, that water seems to make a difference. And if any of you know about this scientist Yamoto, he studied this phenomenon where he froze water and messaged that water or tagged that water. And
Masaru Emoto. I've been wanting to write his name in the text here for a minute now, but yeah, I'll write it in there.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated.
It's fascinating. If anybody has not read the book, if you check out what he's talking about or go online and check him out on YouTube, it will blow your mind and it will certainly open you up to these energetic medicines. So flower essences are simply flowers that they took a metaphor for how they looked and how they acted in nature, and they use that metaphor to determine how they work. So that's what happened with milk thistle, right? Milk thistle was first discovered and used as a tonic for all kinds of things, but then evolved into being the great protector for the liver. And now we have real scientific evidence that backs it all up. And that's what's going to happen with a lot of the agents that we're all interested in. So there's this plant called pulsatilla. Has anybody heard of pulsatilla? So pulsatilla, when you look at pulsatilla, it's one of these beautiful flowers, but it's kind of like droopy. It's got this beautiful flower, but it's kind of like sometimes it's droopy a little bit, and it kind of gets blown away in the wind a little bit. It's a little bit weak, but when it gets the sun on it, it kind of perks up and it really likes warmth and it likes being near other plants. So what did they do with pulsatilla? They said, oh, pulsatilla is a remedy that is better when consoled by love and warmth, because they saw that in the plant, right? And so flower essences basically came from this ideology that you could take a substance and watch it in nature, and from that determine how it might help us based on those metaphors. So a lot of the flower essences are about capturing the essence of what that plant is, right? Sitting, meditating, and understanding that plant, and then bringing that in as a medicine. The reason I wanted to bring this up to you guys is because I work in a very conventional setting. Like I don't get to use homeopathic medicine very often and impress other doctors, right? Because they just look at it like it's snake oil. But I want you guys to understand that there's a remedy called Traumeal. If anybody's heard of it, it's a topical thing that you put on yourself. It's got a whole bunch of homeopathic medicines in it. And a couple of years ago, one of the surgeons that I work with said, Dr. Babij is going to put you on this stuff called Traumeal. It's amazing. It takes care of radiation burns. It takes care of scarring. I can't believe how well it works. I said to him, if I told you what was in Traumeal, you probably would change your tune because there's nothing really in it, right? It's a homeopathic, so it's a very weak version of an herb so that it can be safely applied on someone's body or taken internally. A lot of the homeopathic agents are actually poisonous. It's just that we couldn't give that medicine in a high amount, in a crude medicine, the way we can with, let's say, milk thistle. So they dilute the medicine down so that it's safer, or maybe it's not even there. And this medicine has been used for a long time and with great success. So I don't necessarily know if this is something that works because of the kinetics or the pharmacology, or if it's the intention of the placebo effect. And that's my point, is to let you guys know that, hey, there's a whole system of medicine that potentially is based on the placebo effect, not to mention conventional medicine has plenty of placebo effect, right? There's plenty of times people are prescribed drugs and the drug is working because the patient expects it to work, not necessarily because they need that drug. So I wanted to just also give you some more, if you guys are interested in vasodilation, theanine, passion flower, holy basil. Holy basil is called holy basil because it is worshipped in India, and it is an extremely effective adaptogen that helps your body recycle cortisol and balance it. So holy basil is an awesome supplement to take on the preloading of any experience. However, I will say holy basil is not something to take on the day of an experience. It is very strong and potent, and it could potentiate vomiting. So that's why I wanted to let you guys know about homeopathics, because it's kind of like, well, you could take an agent like this for a month beforehand, and on the day of your experience, you could take it homeopathically and be very safe, knowing that you're not going to vomit a bunch of crude herbs, because homeopathics are greatly diluted to be safe. Also wanted to talk to you guys about gotu kola and ginkgo. I think I mentioned them. They're super effective for long-term and great for recovery post experience. And then, some remedies to consider, you guys, are arnica for trauma, ignatia for sadness. Ignatia is a really good remedy to keep on hand for an experience, because if you're having great sadness, sometimes you need to experience it. But if it's great sadness that's causing a problem, well, you can take homeopathic ignatia, and guess what? Even if it doesn't work, it's certainly not going to hurt you. So rescue remedy, I know that you asked that question. Rescue remedy, Nuria, is like a bunch of flower essences together, and they're basically calling those flower essences to help for anything that's traumatic. You can give rescue remedy. In school, we often took it during difficult exams to kind of keep us mellow. When I had kids, when they were little, I'd give them for every bump and scratch. And then there'd be times where there's a bump and scratch on my kid and I had nothing to give them. So I just pull my chapstick out and put a little bit on my finger and say it's Rescue Remedy salve, right? It doesn't really matter that I'm putting peppermint on them. They're expecting Rescue Remedy, and that's what they're thinking they're getting. So I'm again potentiating that placebo effect by doing that. Talked about the Great Protector. And then for hypertensive symptoms, some people can get dysregulation in their blood during an experience. Blood pressure can go too high, it can go too low. And there are agents for that. I like Rauwolfia. Rauwolfia is a really potent herb to help bring down your blood pressure, to help bring down your pulse. And that can be really helpful if you're experiencing heightened blood pressure and heightened pulse. That's signaling your body to be in a more stressful state. So obviously, before Rauwolfia, we would work on deep breathing, maybe work on soothing that person with some pulsatilla, or maybe just soothing them with touch, depending on how they felt about that. So lastly, I just want to end with clean eating, guys. You know, like clean eating is not easy to do, but let's face it, we're a crowd that is looking at these substances with reverence. So gone are the days that we're going to eat Taco Bell and take mushrooms. And that might work for some, and that might have worked for some. But I want you all to know that once you know better, it's your responsibility to do better. And if you want this whole thing to change your body, your mind, your brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and also improve your cellular integrity, then you got to listen to your cells, right? Your cells don't want junk food. Your body was never meant for junk food. Junk food is called junk food because it's junk. And I hate to be prejudiced here, but the reason I'm saying all this is because I do think that when you eat really, really healthy going into an experience, you potentiate that. You potentiate eating healthy. And to be clear, another reason I'm into this healthy way of eating is because all of the junk food, all of the foods we kind of already know we shouldn't eat, they suppress brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Sugar suppresses brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Dyes and colors in Skittles have been studied to be deleterious to our cells. If you're having an enlightened experience with psilocybin or anything for that matter, I doubt your cells want blue 40 or yellow 6 in them. They don't. And the reason I know that is because the only colors your cells are interested in are the colors of flavonoids, catechins, sunlight, and the colors on Earth. Those colors have been shown. Anybody wants, they can go look, check out Dr. Huberman. Huberman talks about this. When you see a vista or you see beautiful colors or patterns or swirls that are in nature, it grows your brain with brain-derived neurotrophic factor. We now know that screen time does the opposite. And that's why these experiences are meant to be in a cabin in the woods, and why we should take time to plan our experience. If, in my opinion, what I'm trying to share with you all is that you can not only gain benefit from the experience in your mind, but you can gain the experience in your cells. It can be beneficial for your hair and your toenails, your heart muscle, and your dendrites in your brain. So all of those things are impacted when we curate an experience that makes our canoe strong, safe, but also super healthy, right? So what questions do you guys have?
One moment before we start the questions. Wow, I knew this was going to be amazing, and I am learning so much. I am blown away. I appreciate you so much. Perhaps we can put together a list of some of the things that you have talked about and send them out in an email.
Yeah, we could easily do that.
Awesome. So a lot of people in this Zoom right now, I have your emails. That's how you know about this. But if you're not getting emails from the ministry and you want to receive them, please type your email into the group chat. If you don't know how to do that, just get a hold of me through Facebook, Instagram, the email. I'll put it in right now, minister at churchofthesacredfruit.org so that I'm getting much better at contact organization. So yeah, just reach out and make sure that I have you. Okay, Andrew, awesome. And Chris, I think but anyway, so what did I want to say? Saffron, I saw it for sale at Costco. I don't know if it's a great quality. I haven't checked it out, but I will say I saw it there. Passion flower, holy basil, bacopa. These are things that we have in our store here. You can buy them. They're organic. If I can get organic, I bring in organic. Lion's mane as well. I wanted to ask you really quickly, you're talking about ginger as a kinetic inducer, and it's an ingredient that I put in a lot of our microdoses with psilocybin, and that's exactly was my intuition with it. I absolutely love like the scientific backing that you're giving these things, because I wanted to ask you, people are using I forget what I think you're talking about magnesium or like niacin. What I was using
nice.
ginger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a more comfortable experience and perhaps being able to take less lion's mane than 800 to 1,000 milligrams a day, can we use things like ginger, psilocybin, and cordyceps that would be the Brahma blend that I make, to like activate each ingredient more? Like,
ginger cordyceps blend is such an amazing blend. You had me at cordyceps, but you're always going to get me with ginger. Ginger is such a potent antioxidant. It's an anti-inflammatory. So even like, let's say you're taking ginger with a substance and maybe you took too much of the substance, because the difficulty that we have is that with brain-derived neurotrophic factor, if you have too much of an insult to the brain, it no longer benefits you. So this is how alcohol works. And just to be clear, I'm not saying anything bad about alcohol. This is a factual study. I do have a bit of a prejudice against alcohol. I will put that out there as a disclaimer. When a male my age drinks 1 to 2 shots of straight alcohol a day, it actually benefits my brain, because that small amount of alcohol for my size hurts my brain just enough that my brain releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor to protect itself from the damage. And those protective benefits outweigh the harmful effects of the alcohol. The problem with the study, it's called the J-curve study, meaning it's beneficial, but as soon as I get to 2 drinks and more, it's way worse for me. There's no benefit of the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I've hurt my brain more than I fixed it. You guys already know this. It's the same thing with oxygen. Breathing exercises are meant to help us. However, there are also breathing exercises where we hold the bundas at the bottom of a breath and we're depriving our brain of oxygen. That small amount of depriving the brain of oxygen actually insults the brain just enough to make brain-derived neurotrophic factor. But we all know that if I held my breath for 10 minutes, it's going to be back to the alcohol. The holding my breath for 10 minutes is hurting my brain. So how much holding of the breath? And that's the really interesting question, because it's probably different for every single one of us how much breath holding we need to have to potentiate the right amount of brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Amazing. So let's work. There is so much interest in this, and I just want to plug a couple things, and then I'm going to turn off the live stream, and then I'm going to let everyone ask questions. And some people did have to go, but yes, it's being recorded. We are going to send out an email with like more of those names of herbs and whatnot that you can use. On March 9th, we're doing a chaga circle. It's our second chaga circle. It's to honor the birch forest. We will consume chaga tea and Amanita muscaria mushroom at AK Namaste in Palmer this time. So up here in Palmer, Alaska. Markian is going to talk science and spirituality. My husband, Dennis, is going to talk about his foraging practices, safe foraging, sustainable foraging, how he does it, what to look for, where it grows. And I am going to, with the help of everyone in the room, lead the ceremonial singing portion of the event. It is open to everyone. I think there's a 25-person capacity. We usually do sell out. So I will be sending out an email about that soon. And then also we have on March 23rd up in Chickaloon, Alaska, which is like 35 minutes more far north from Anchorage than Palmer. So it's like an hour and a half from Anchorage. It's an overnight ceremony, also hosted by myself, Markian, and my husband. We are going to be serving sacred psilocybin at that ceremony, and it will be a sleepover. So we've rented the yurt and we have a cabin. We're going to have a fire outside. It's also going to be, there will be a ceremonial singing portion, drumming, and some sound healing. And then we're going to do some recorded music so that people have a chance to talk to each other. It's not going to be like a super heroic dose, but it is going to be a journey level dose. That's happening on Saturday, March 23rd. And we are going to have the honor of Markian actually cooking for that event. He's going to cook entheogenic foods that go well with the whole mushroom ceremony. And in the morning, we will have a group integration, and we will also have a jaunt in the forest led by Dennis to check out some early spring, late winter foraging up in the area. It's on a lake. It's a super energetically quiet spot. It is going to be very beautiful. So more to come on that for local people and other people that want to come in from out of town. You're always welcome. Us Alaskans love to have visitors. And then one more thing I want to mention, Betsy Oliver is here. Actually, Markian just mentioned it. She's offering a free psychedelic integration workshop. I believe it's online. Betsy is also a local coach, and I'm not sure if she refers to herself as a medicine woman, but I have been to her cacao ceremony. It's a beautiful ceremony. So she offers that and some other sacred plant medicine offerings that you can learn more about directly from her. But I have posted her integration in my stories today on Instagram, and we will be posting it again. But she's in the comments here, and she has put her email up. We can also add that to an email going out, and we can add that to this list of herbs and stuff so that you can get connected, because integration is so important, and it really takes a village to cover all of these bases of the psychedelic experience. And lastly, there is a psychedelic conference in Alaska in August, and we're all going to be a part of it. It's being put on by the Alaska Entheogenic Awareness Council, which Betsy and Markian are part of, have been a part of, as well as Gina Marie. You guys probably know her, some of you. It is going to be so awesome. It's a little bit out, but just like stay tuned. I'm glad to see all of these emails in the comment section, because I am really a big goal of mine is to you know, get everyone like in the know. And yeah, so thank you. I'm